Hello and welcome back to the Bygone Times. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to look at this double-handled Roseville vase with the Snowberry pattern. Set it up a little bit, put it down here. So Roseville was one of three major art potteries located in basically eastern Ohio around the turn of the 20th century. Roseville, along with Rookwood and Weller. Roseville itself was founded by J.F. Weaver in Roseville, Ohio in 1890, and it was incorporated a couple of years later by George Young, who had been a salesman, secretary, and general manager at the company. Early on, and especially under the leadership of George Young, Roseville had a lot of success in producing stoneware items, including flower pots and jugware, that type of thing, more practical type items. They purchased Midland Pottery in 1895 and then kind of started to expand their offerings at that time. They purchased another company, Clark Stoneware Company, in Zanesville, and moved their headquarters there in 1898. And then in 1900, kind of following on the lead of Rookwood in particular, and also Weller, Young hired, I think his name was Ross Purdy, to create the first art pottery line for Roseville. And this was meant to compete with Weller's Luelsa and Rookwood's kind of standard glaze, and also the Utopian ware from Owen's Pottery. They quickly expanded to 4 plants by 1901, and were employing well over 300 people. And then between 1904 and 1909, they really kind of expanded and blossomed their art pottery line, and they had designs that included names like Juvenile, Donatello, Mustique, and Polio. Became a very popular pottery. And then as the World War I years wore on, and slightly after, the blackberry, sunflower, and pinecone patterns became popular. Kind of after World War II, like many companies, Roseville started to decline a bit, and it was done producing pottery by 1953. The facilities were bought by the Mosaic Tile Company. Interesting to note, in 2017, a company called King's Fortune in Fishers was granted the trademarks for Roseville and Roseville Pottery. So we'll see if they resurrect any of these designs or patterns or molds, I guess you might say. If we look at this vase, this is Snowberry. That's the pattern here, kind of a winter themed design. And Roseville did use Snowberry in all kinds of different blanks, so including fancy vases and kind of these little flower vases with the double handles. This is a fairly small vase. And this design was a late era invention, I guess, of Roseville. Snowberry, I think, started in 1947, so there were just a few years left of pottery making for Roseville after this. So it's a pretty popular design, and especially the pieces that are more in that Art Deco or mid-century style in terms of the function and the shape of the pieces. This is a little more traditional piece, and this is typical coloring, green or orange, and they also did Snowberry in think kind of a smoky blue. I'm not sure what the real name of the color would be. And those are kind of the earthy type tones that they used for Snowberry. If we look at the mark, so it's a pretty strong mark on it. It says Roseville, USA. And then there's actually like a piece number here, IV2-7. And so if you look up the Roseville piece numbers, you'll see pieces identical to this. So if you look up IV2-7, even without Roseville, you'll see this a lot of times online on, you know, identification guides or for sale or whatever. In terms of value, speaking of for sale, this one probably checks in like the $50 to $70 range. It's in really nice shape. However, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the type of thing that you could find for pretty cheap at auction or a flea market or a garage sale. It wouldn't be out of the question to pay $10 to $30 for something like this if you were to encounter it, you know, kind of out of its element in a setting where people weren't really thinking about antiques or whatever. I think it would be a good buy at those prices. So for these types of pieces in general, including Weller and Rickwood and others, it's kind of ironic. So in the 80s and 90s, there was a kind of an explosion of popularity of this so-called art pottery from the early 20th century, that pieces that weren't really technically antiques, and then all the way into mid-century, like this piece, as some of the older pottery got to be really, really expensive and kind of out of the reach of collectors. These pieces started to gain in popularity, and their prices went up as a consequence. Now that they are actually approaching antique age, so this one is nearing 80 years old, so another 20 years or so, and it'll be a legitimate antique. Those prices have stabilized or dropped, as more and more inexpensive alternatives are available to us as decorating pieces through Amazon or whatever. These prices have dropped, so it's kind of funny to see that. Kind of a little bit disheartening, but it's just the way, you know, market forces work. So anyway, there's a little bit of history of Roseville pottery and a quick look at this Snowberry double-handled vase from the late 1940s or early 1950s. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.